Gender identity disorder, or GID as it's often called too, refers to any kind of issues, psychological problems that come from gender identity questions or gender identity issues. So it can be anyone questioning the gender identity, feeling uncomfortable in a gender identity. So anything relating to gender identity that would cover that. So it's a very broad term. But it doesn't necessarily mean that a person with GID wants to transition or change their sex or have surgery. It just means that there are gender identity issues, problems maybe, or problems arising from that. Whereas the term transsexuality, for example, that's a clinical term. That's a term psychologists, psychiatrists use, the doctors use. It's a diagnosis, and what people with gender identity disorders or issues, when they're diagnosed as transsexual, it means that they're uncomfortable in their own biological sex. They have this strong feeling that they were born in the wrong body and strongly want that to change and want to transition into the opposite biological sex.
My name is Vanessa Lacey. I'm transgender, transsexual. I've come out 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago now. I have 2 kids. I'm separated, living in an apartment in Waterford City. I'm going into my last semester of a 3-year degree course in psychology. I finished up in May. And I'm looking at surgery in the summer.
The first place to start was when I was young. I didn't feel like everybody else who was male. Didn't feel like I should have felt. And I grew up feeling completely different for a number of years, but I didn't know why. So in around 1998, I met a girl who is a counsellor, Canadian, who came over to live here, and she was pretty much way ahead of the game in terms of she counselled on gender, she counselled on sexuality, drugs, family issues, and all those sorts of things. So I ended up talking to her, and she said, "Look, you might be transgendered." And I looked at her and thought, well, what's that? And she basically said, "Look, why don't you go to counselling for a while and see how you feel and see how you get on?" So I went to counselling for 6 months, independently of her, and the outcome of that was that I decided that I was transgendered, and from that point on I decided to live as I felt comfortable, and that was as Louise. And I'm in a very comfortable place right now, and I don't have any regrets or why I'm here. I'm enjoying my life for the first time properly in my life.
I became to understand that my biological sex was not congruent with my my gender identity, my brain sex, and how my gender, my core self, from very first memories that I had when I was a child. And although I just didn't feel one of the boys when I was 4 or 5 or 6, I wasn't quite one of the girls either. So like the boys would beat me up, and then the girls would beat me up. So I was kind of in the middle, and it was like very difficult because like the girls would wear their clothes, and that's what I identified with. I identified with being a girl. But as I grew up then, I was like socially constructed, not by anyone's fault, but I was socially constructed by my family, by society, by the school I went to. It was an all-boys school, and you know, it's either get used to this or what. Especially like in 1960s Ireland and early 70s, it's like you're part of this whether you like it or not, so you have to get on with it. Although, you know, it just never, ever, ever felt right. Well, when I was a child, I just hadn't the language to understand how I felt. I just thought it was some sort of a cruel joke played by God, that although I felt I was a girl, always felt I was a girl, I had something that girls didn't have. And, you know, I'd go to bed every night, and like we were from religious people, and my mother was very religious and my father was, and like I'd say a prayers before we go to bed, and I'd always pray that I'd wake up as a girl, and it never happened. And you know, that's how I felt as a child. I'd wake up every morning and still it'll be there, and still I'd cry, and it's like, oh my God, like, you know. And you think, well, I must be the most unlucky person in the world that there was two chances. I'd either be a boy or a girl, and what a mistake I was. And that's how I always felt growing up. And it was very sad how I felt. And looking back, like, people see transgender people now as adults, and they look, or they might laugh or whatever, but they can't understand that there's transgender children born every day, and how do they feel? Nobody looks at the adult, that adult was once upon a time a child walking around with total feelings of being in the wrong body. And really, I know it's a cliche, but it's you are born in the wrong body.
There was a lot of stress. I never felt male. I never felt female. I felt trapped in the middle, where I had a male body, yet I never felt male. I never felt mentally male. I never did the male bonding things like going to the pub, watching the football match and all that sort of stuff. I was never into sport. I couldn't tell you one end of a football pitch from another. It just wasn't me. I had more women friends than men friends, as it turned out, when I thought back on it. When I was a kid, I wanted to let my hair grow long. My mother wouldn't hear a word of it. I wore tight trousers. I wore pointy shoes. At one point I had bell-bottom jeans, which was pretty much unheard of when nobody else was wearing them. And hipster trousers, and I just loved that. And I tried to keep myself fit and you know, trim. But at the end of it all, I suppose I just didn't feel right the way I was. When I think back, I had an experience of meeting someone who was transgendered, or more likely what we call intersexed, where they're born with the genitalia of both sexes. They dressed like a woman, spoke like a man, and were 6'2" tall. Everybody in the local village accepted them. They never had a problem with them. But there might have been a certain reason for that, because Molly's fists would make my two fists would make one of hers. So she didn't take any prisoners. She worked with the men in the mill. It was one of the linen mills. She worked with the men in the mill, and she just was herself. And when I look back on that, I think, you know, that's the way I should have been. Not maybe in that physical sense, but I should have been true to who I was.
Listen to your children and being honest with them, being close to them, and kind of knowing what's going on in their life, and knowing that they can trust you at, even if it's, you know, especially if a teenager and like might go out go off drinking or smoking or something, but just to let them know that you're always there, and if anything does happen, you know, that they could be in danger, that they know they can pick up the phone, and you know, you're still there, and you're still, you know, approachable. And I think that's one of the keys to being a good parent, but also it's honesty. It's honesty from you, that you're honest to them and you let them know exactly what's going on, and not to be treating them like mushrooms and, you know, feeding them shit and leaving them in the dark. So, yeah, that's my form of parent: honesty and listening.
Not immediately, because I still felt the same. Once I moved on to hormone therapy, that was the point where everything settled, and I was content within the situation where I was able to move forward towards final transition. And when I mean by transition, live fully as Louise. And at that point, the clinical psychologist, Dr. James Kelly, that I was seeing on a regular basis, said to me, "How do you feel? You've been on hormones now for 4 or 5 months. How do you feel?" And I said, "James, for the first time in my life, I feel normal. I feel completely normal." And that's the way I've been ever since. Well, actually, I didn't. That was the sad part. My ex told my 2 children, and probably not in the best way, because they don't talk to me now. Haven't spoken to me for, I think, 7 years now. I had a cousin, unfortunately, who passed away in October 2009. She was 76. She had lived with the family. She had brought me up. She was like a sister, big sister to me. Surrogate mother. My mother was never that maternal. And I told her, and I was dreading telling her, because somebody of that age, I felt, well, maybe they wouldn't understand. But actually they were great. And unfortunately, I used to keep in touch with her very regularly, maybe once a week or once a fortnight. And she kept me in touch after the breakup of the marriage. She kept me in touch with all the family happenings, what was going on. And then unfortunately, she was diagnosed with bowel cancer. She passed away within 7 weeks. And that was an awful loss to me, because she had accepted me. She had met me once as Louise. And I went up to see her 2 sons and her daughter, my second cousins. And I didn't go to the funeral because I didn't want to take away from the dignity of the funeral. And I went up about 2 days after the funeral, and I spoke to all the family. They were all there. They took me into the living room, the front room, the best room in the house, as you do in those occasions, and made me very welcome. And her daughter turned around to me and she said, "Look," she said, "Louise, you're living your life the way you want. You're not doing anybody any harm. As long as you're happy doing what you want, we're happy. We have no issue with it. We have no problem." And that was a big surprise to me, because my ex had spoken to me on the Saturday before the funeral, which was, she died on the Saturday morning. And she had spoken to me that afternoon, and she said, "You don't want to be going to that funeral," she says, "because they want to know nothing about you. They're ashamed of you. They want to know nothing about you." And I was dreading going up to see them, and I was more than pleasantly surprised when I walked into the room and I got a really nice warm welcome. And that meant a lot to me, because, you know, in that situation, how would you feel yourself, you know?
Well, the most supportive people, I mean, without doubt, was my 2 children. I mean, without them, I wouldn't be here, and my family wanted me to move away when I told them, and they didn't want to bring shame on the family, and their concern was they had a concern for the children. Although they had a concern for the children, they didn't talk to the children about it. They wanted to have the children underneath a stone, not hearing anything. And I was told not to explain it, not to tell them, and just basically move away from them, you're better off. So I thought, I can't do this to them, and I brought them away to juries in Cork, and we had a couple of days away, and I said, "Look, we need to talk about this." And I basically told them, and I said, like, you know, I could move away and you can see me whenever. And, you know, my oldest boy then, at the time, I think he was 12, and he said, "Well, you know, you're not going anywhere." 11, actually. He said, "You're not going anywhere. You're staying here. You're a human being just like everybody else." And at that moment in time, I was not going anywhere. The way it made me feel, like, to have my children backing me and supporting me through this was just so powerful. It just kept me going. I've thought, like, I mean, when I doubts of, like, am I doing the right thing or whatever, and you know, and then you had your suicidal thoughts as well, and think, well, I ain't leaving them children, not for nobody. I'm going to be there by their side, and if they don't want me to be at their side because they could be embarrassed or whatever, and like my oldest is a teenager, and most teenagers don't want their parents around anyway, and with being a trans parent, it's, you know, you need to back off a little bit and give him some space. At the same time, he still hugs me and kisses me and tells me he loves me, and that's all I need. From being in transition and to accepting after so many years of who I am, I think it has benefited my parenting ability. I mean, before I transitioned and when I was living a complete lie and keeping all the anger and frustration inside, and that was like impacting on my relationship with my partner as well, and it was hard on her, extremely hard on her, because she knew, and it was like she was trying to keep a lid on it and make sure nobody knew, and it was extremely hard for her. And it was also extremely hard for the children, because my anger was seeping out into family life, and it was very hard on the children. And even now the children say, well, especially my youngest, he says, well, you know, it's much better having you like this than the way you were before. Another time we were in the supermarket, and children and teenager coming after me saying, Daddy, Daddy, can I have Daddy, Daddy? You know, and two Portuguese women just looked around as if to say, what the hell is this? You know, so looking back at that, it was really funny. But that's what you need to do. You need to laugh, and you can't have secrecy around children. And I like to put it out there and say, this is it, and explain it to them, and make sure, you know, any questions that they come back and ask the questions, and I answer them as honestly as possible.
Well, the case started off simply enough because I worked for a transport company, and the transport company, I was there for 5 years. They were very good to me. Having said that, I worked very hard for them, so it was, you know, it was supported both sides really. And I told the MD in October 2006 that I was leaving. The following year, that would have been May 2007. And he asked me, why do you want to leave? He said, you're good at what you do. We want you to stay and work with us. And I took him over to my computer, and I pulled up a website with my photograph. And I said to him, do you recognize that person? And he looked at me and he said, no. And I said, well, that's me. I said, I'm transgendered. And he looked at me like I'd got 3 heads. His jaw hit the floor and bounced back up again. And he said, wow. And I said, that's why I'm leaving. Because I said, I don't think a transport company can fit with my transition when I want to work as Louise. So he said, look, we'll work with you. We'll sort something out. So eventually, around about March of 2007, beginning of March, I went off to get my name changed by deed poll, because I thought they maybe weren't taking this issue that seriously, that they'd kept me waiting for 3 to 4 months before I could actually come into work as Louise. So I went into work on the following day, and the first thing he said was, you'll have to work on the phones as in male mode for the next 9 months up to Christmas. Then he said, you'll have to go out and see clients in male mode. And I looked at him and said, well, that was something we didn't really talk about. So at the end of the week, I went down with a touch of the flu, so I was off for a week or so, and I didn't get back in now till the 20th of March, with St. Patrick's Day being in the middle. And when I walked in that day, he turned around to me and he said, listen, I want you to go back to male mode for 3 months. And I asked him why. And he said, I said, what's the reason? He wouldn't give me a reason. He said, I want you to work. He just basically said, it's not working. That was the reason that he gave. This is not working. I want you to go back to male mode for 3 months. And I said, no, I can't do that. He then turned around and said, I don't want you to use the ladies' loo. Now, there was 2 loos, one male, one female. And yet, he would have used, the manager would have used the ladies' loo if the other one was occupied. So it was one law for him and one law for everybody else. So I just basically said no. But at this whole juncture, what they were doing was, or what he was doing in particular, was big open plan office, drivers standing with their CVs at the reception. And I would have been asked, would I go over and photocopy a driving licence? I went over to photocopy the driving licence as Louise, and then he would turn around and he would call me by my middle name while I was standing at the photocopier. And the drivers would be standing like 3 feet from me, and they would be wondering what the heck was going on. So it got to the point where I wouldn't even answer by my middle name at all. Wouldn't even countenance. So it got very stressful and very difficult to do the work, to a point where I actually dreaded going into work in the morning. It was just extremely stressful. And then about the middle of April, the MD said to me, look, he said, we're opening a new office in the South Circular Road. It's not ready yet. There's an atmosphere in the office. We would like you to go there and work. But we want you to work from home for a month until this office is ready. And I looked at him and said, well, look, you know, things have calmed down a little bit here now. I said, I don't particularly want to work from home. And he said, well, it'll only be for a month. He said, we'll move you now to the new office in the South Circular Road. So that, I went to the new office around about the 22nd, 23rd of April. I was still, I went to work from home 23rd of April, and I was still working from home at the end of July. And he turned around to me at that point and he said, listen, you need to produce more business or we're going to have to let you go. And it's probably best if you go and get yourself a job. I had great difficulty working from home because there was no interaction. I'd been working in the office where there was a lot of throughput. Drivers coming in, talking about the situation out in the road, talking about who's looking for drivers and who wasn't. We were supplying drivers on a freelance basis to some of the big food companies. And I'd done quite well at it, and I suppose 60% of the turnover of the company I'd produced on my own. So my desk was still empty in the office up until early July. And every time I asked to go back into the office, I was refused. There's no room for the office. There's no room there in the office. So in the end, I left at the beginning of August 2007. I was out of work for 4 months. And I went then, got a job with Sunshine Radio, as it is now, it's Country Mix. They're part of East Coast Radio. And I was out selling advertising as Louise, knocking doors, cold calling, doing the usual things, and selling quite well. And then the recession, of course, 2008 hit. Advertising sales dropped 24%. So they had to cut costs, so they let myself and a couple of other people go. At that point, I was the last in, first out. So I've been out of work ever since. So the award, the 35,000 plus interest award, will hardly cover what I've lost in terms of income and everything else, because I've had to put everything on hold. I haven't been able to get on with my full transition as I wanted to. So 35,000 plus will help. There's no question about it, but I'd rather it never had happened. But if I can go out and sell advertising for a radio station, why the heck couldn't I have done it for a transport company?
On one level, professionally, I'm working with TENI and helping people along the way is just a major part of my life. My college work and you know, my psychology degree, which will be finished in a few months, will, you know, hopefully I'll get there and get a degree, something I never thought I'd have after leaving school at 14 years of age and failed everything. You know, family-wise, my aspirations there would be that my children could go to college and get a good education, but more so be happy and content in who they are and know that I'm always there for them. And no matter what they do, that I will be there for them and I will never judge them. I'll always be there. And I just want them to grow into adults who are non-judgmental people and who are happy and content with being who they are. I think, can you ask that question again for me there?
Where is Ireland
Failing.
currently with the rights of transgender people?
I think Ireland they're lacking in some ways in because maybe they haven't got the tools themselves. They don't understand it. It's that they don't understand transgender people themselves. But I think that they're learning. I think that Ireland is a fantastic place to live for being a transgender person, and especially being from like a small city, Waterford. I think it's such an accepting place to live, and anywhere I go in Ireland, I have, I feel at ease and feel comfortable of where I am, and one thing I was surprised during my transition. I went to Chicago in the United States, and I felt so uncomfortable over there, and I felt people staring at me, and I don't get that in Ireland. So I think that like Ireland needs to take a bow for what we've done. Although we're lacking in some ways, I think that people are trying so hard to work with us and trying to understand and asking us to do talks, and I think Ireland is fantastic.